We're currently building a Flutter and Flame game with Visual Novel to learn how to use both Flutter and Flame. I have the text, it's embedded directly into this kind of layout demonstration here. But what I'm going to do is break it out into a separate component. So I'm going to create a subfolder called model. And in the subfolder model, I'm going to create a new file called dialog. And this will be the characteristics of the dialog. I'll start off with a class called dialog. And we want to have the character name, but I'm going to use a enum to make sure that we're only using the names that the game supports. So there's only two characters at this current time. There's Akemi and Kenji. And so we'll have a character name here. And we'll just call it a character name. We need to create a constructor. So you can do control dot and it can create the constructor for the final fields. I'm going to want it to be required. So I'm going to put curly brackets around it. And I'll use the word keyword required from Dart. And then we'll have a couple different locations. So this is a tea house that they're meeting at. Let's just start with two different locations. So do control dot. So I have all the required in the constructor here that of the characteristics of the dialog, the properties. Next we're going to create another folder for the data. And within the data folder, I'm going to create a new file. So there's going to be multiple storylines with decision branching. So I'm going to call it storyline 100.dart. And I'm using the 100 portion here. I'm going to call it each of the storylines like 100, 200, 300. So this is the first of the storylines. We're going to create a list of dialogues. And we'll use storyline 100 dialog. And it will be a list of these dialogues. So dialogue has a character name. So initially it will be Akemi that will be talking. So because we created the enum, comes up. Make it a little bit bigger here. The location is also an enum that we just created. They're in the tea house. And the text will be what she has to say. So, what happened here? Okay, and then what she has to say is, "Hi Kenji, it's great to see you." So if we want another piece of text, although we're not changing it right now, we will do so in the future. what are you doing at the tea house? And then Kenji will talk. It's gonna take us a couple of videos to build it up, but okay, Kenji. Just gonna say, like, Akemi, I came to see you. Do you have time to talk now? And by doing this type of structure, it's easier for the writer, us, to write it. So we'll have Akemi again. There's still the tea house, and she's going to say, yes, I have time. You look so serious. Is everything okay? So right now I haven't implemented the block structure yet, so we won't be able to actually change the text until the next video when I implement the block. So we'll just go in here and replace this string for the typewriter, the animated. We're using the animated text kit here, and right now there's a string, right? So if we string goes here. But we want to pull it from the array, the list that we're building. So instead of this string like this, we're gonna go storyline dialog. Initially, we'll just hard code the 0 in. We're gonna use the qubit to dialog. We're gonna use the qubit to see where it is. And it's whoops dot text. Okay, so let's see whether it's actually pulling it from the data file. And it is. So it's this first piece of string here. And it should be an exact match. So in the future, we'll use the qubit to change it. Otherwise, it's not going to redraw automatically. And this is the basic strategy. But in order to do this, to have the Flame engine update the Flutter screen, I will use a qubit. But not in this video. Okay, so let's go to the Flame layer. And in this Flame layer, I'm going to create a dialog component. Dialog component. So components are the equivalent of widgets in Flutter. So Flutter has widgets, and the Flame system has components. So this will be a component that I'm going to add on to the Flame screen. Dialog component, and it's going to extend the position component. And I'm going to use the mix-in here. Has game ref, which is from the Flame system, and it will be Akemi game. So I'm now set up that we can start putting some stuff in here. We're going to need each of the dialog components of the dialog instances. So we'll go dialog. Initially, we'll set it to storyline 100, 0. So we're just going to take the first one initially. Control dot, and I will import it. So this is the imports I have right now. I have the data, I have the game, and Flames, the Flame components, and then I have the dialog that we created this one, right? We just created it. We'll go override. Whoops. Future void onload async, and I'll run the super await super.onload. This is from Flame, right? So it's gonna load the graphics and other things that we need within this dialog component. They're going to add the dialog component onto the game. So right now we want to start populating it with some graphics. So we'll create a late sprite Akemi sprite late sprite Kenji sprite. Oops. Kenji sprite late sprite tea house. And we'll create a vector 2 for, actually we're going to split the characters up, character 1 and character 2. So there's one primary character that will be speaking. Character size, late vector 2. Whoops. Secondary character size. Okay, so we got the sprites. We also need some sprite components, so I'll just instantiate up here. Sprite component, character component, which is the character that's speaking component. And we'll just instantiate an empty sprite component for now. And we'll do the same thing for the secondary sprite component, secondary character. Sprite component, and there's a secondary character. The secondary character is always going to be the character that's not speaking. Alright, so back in the Akemi _ game.dart, here's where we are adding the sprite component. So we're going to copy this section here. And this is the background sprite. And I think I'll put it here. Sprite component, background, image, maybe background scene, the sprite component. Background scene, sprite equals game ref dot load sprite, and we'll eventually want to add the background scene in. Okay, and then we're gonna need the size. Game ref dot size. In the Akemi game, I'm going to first comment this out, and then I'll add the dialog in. Okay, it still appears to work. I'm going to delete this from the Akemi game, and then we'll work on the next section here. Game ref dot size, game ref dot size dot y. And I think I'm gonna go for an effect that it's the character talking. I'm gonna try to make the character talking bigger, and then the one that's listening, I'll keep it at this size. So secondary character size. So I'm gonna just basically double it. So we have the Akemi component here. Comment it out. We're now calling it character component. Character component. And the load sprite is from Flame, so I'm going to do game ref. This game ref is from the mixin here. So with this mixin has game ref, I can access the methods from the Flame game. Character component. So I'm going to make her bigger, so I'm going to do away with this 95%. I used to make her smaller. And I'm going to have the Akemi sprite be above it so we can switch it back and forth. So I'll move this out here. And I'll put Akemi sprite here. Okay, so now we've got Kenji. So first need to construct Kenji. So this is a secondary character component, and size will be the character size. The sprite will be, we'll set it to this first. We're going to break it out right after this. Game ref dot load sprite. And the position is this here. But it's GameRef.x. And we will add the secondary character component. There's this update method, maybe we'll just cut it out. So this is below the onload method. GameRef.size. Have it be 40% of the screen. The anchor point's on the left hand side. So it's this anchor here that will be 40% of the screen. So under the character component position, we no longer need this because we're using a different strategy with regards to the character appearance here. So deleted that, you should push her up a bit. Okay. So for a little variation with how the character looks, I'm going to create a Boolean variable here for character flipped. And I'll set it to false initially. Then in the update method here, so if the character has reached this, then we'll check to see if the character is not flipped, else if character not flipped, oh, wrong one. And then if it's not flipped, then we'll flip it. So there's character component, this is from Flame. You can just flip it around the center. Flip horizontally around center. And then we'll set the character flipped to true. And theoretically, she should flip the other way. Her elbows, create a little bit of space between her and Kenji, and then when she meets him, she flips her body the other way. So in the future, we will create some different emotions for Akemi. This is surprised, and this is sad. But right now, we'll just use this one. We'll just flip the body posture to indicate that there's been some change in the game. With this strategy, we're gonna switch the character. So we'll just replace Akemi with Kenji when it's Kenji's turn to speak. He'll be larger. He's coming out from the left side of the screen initially. And we'll leave it like that and just see how the game feels. So we're going to create a switch statement for the character name. So if the character name is Akemi, the character component, the sprite of the character component will be the Akemi sprite, which we're loading in the onload method right there. And we're going to set the secondary character component to Kenji sprite. Component dot sprite equals Kenji sprite. But if it's a case, it's case character name Kenji, then it will be reversed. Okay, so let's go back to the Akemi game. And we're going to delete all the components that we're not using. So it's very skinny. But we're going to add the on tap, the tap detector back in. So we're going to make the entire screen where the tappable portion will be the areas that the Flutter widget is not on. So its bottom portion is a Flutter widget as well as the icon button here. On tap, which is from Flame. On tap up info, there's async. And we're gonna increment this dialog. Int dialog ID equals 101. We don't need that. We don't need that. So we're gonna increment the dialog ID plus. So back in this dialog component, we want to make sure the dialog is changed. So dialog equals story line 100 dialog. There's the game ref dialog ID. I'm going to subtract 101. The reason I'm using this numbering convention of 101 is that there's going to be different storylines, right? So storyline 2 will be 201. So to get the index 0, which is the first element of the array from our data here, this would be index 0 with this, which is the first piece of it. And then we'll increment it. So right now, I don't think it's going to work. I think I'm going to have to delete the previous one, but we'll see what happens if I just load it. Okay, this is what I expected. We can easily fix this. There's likely a couple different errors. I think I forgot to have the Kenji sprite equals await. And it is this thing here. switching, but there's no movement in here. Which I think I want the movement. And I also think that's adding multiple layers like of the dialogue. So I'm going to check if the children of it is not empty. And if so, I'm going to remove all the children. Then I'll add the dialogue component right after that. So I'm just going to remove the previous dialogue component and I'll add the new one. Right now the text isn't changing because we haven't set up this Flutter text widget yet in this video to change the text. So what we're looking for is just to see whether the character changes. So this text will change in the future. And the game will kind of be like this with the changing text. I'll put a check here before it adds it. If, let's see, dialogue. What's it called? Dialogue, storyline 100 dialogue. Storyline 100 dialogue. The length is, so if dialogue ID minus 101 is less than storyline, then we will add it in here. Okay. There's 3 pieces of text here. So theoretically, this first scene, and then we'll go to the next one, and the text will change in the future. We're just using this male character as the third one. So it should be at the third one. So if I click it, it shouldn't fail. And it's failing. Okay. Okay, I'll try it says that it became 3 somehow, so we'll go with -1 here. Second scene, third scene, and okay, it's not filling. Okay, in the next video, I'm going to move this dialog ID into a qubit using the block architecture. The qubit's a little simpler, and once we change it into the block architecture, we should be able to push the changes down into Flutter here, where this is the number for the that we're using, and when this thing changes, theoretically the text here should update and the screen should withdraw. So we'll cover that in the next video. All right, have a great day.